car. And then the second thing we're going to be doing is changing the rear diff fluid, the center diff fluid, and the transmission fluid. And for that I use this Titan Cinto fluid. It's 75W80. I'll give you the part number. And then also for the oil on the car, I use the mobile one. It's the turbo diesel 5W40. And you can find this at Walmart. This one you have to special order. Okay, so to start with, to change the oil, we need to take off the belly pan, of course. A lot of guys, you'll notice this belly pan's missing because people never put them back on. So we'll just start by taking this off. Belly pan's off. Next, we'll get a drain pan under here, and I'll go ahead and take off this drain bolt. The drain bolt it's 19 millimeter, so let's go ahead and take it off. We're also going to want to take off the oil filter. This should be on hand tight, but sometimes they don't come off very easily. So I'll use something like this. It's a oil filter wrench. Now this car is a little more difficult to get stuff off. There's an aftermarket oil cooler on here, so there's oil cooler lines in the way, so I'll have to fiddle with it to get the oil filter off. Now we'll just let everything drain. Been draining for a little while, maybe a half hour. Always make sure to use a new drain bolt with a new washer, or sometimes they come together. So let's go ahead and button this back up. It's still dripping a little bit, but I'm not going to wait any longer. On the oil filters, I use a MAN one. It's a W930/21. It's just the regular size one, not the extra capacity, because with the aftermarket oil cooler, there's just no room for high capacity one. Also, some people fill this or fill the filter with oil before installing it. On this car, it would just make a huge mess, so I don't do it. But make sure that you put oil on the O-ring, this rubber O-ring, and make sure there's no O-ring on the filter housing as well. Since I have these oil lines in the way, I gotta kind of put this in funky. Now you're not supposed to crank these down either. It's just hand tight, and not super tight either. Just there you go. That's about right. You gotta get a feel for it. The oil drain plug, you're supposed to torque it down to about 30 Newton meters. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Now it's time to put oil in it. Now I tend to leave the belly pan off. I will put the oil in the car, run it, make sure nothing's leaking over here and everything's good. And then I'll go ahead and put the belly pan back on. You can put it on now if you like. It's totally up to you. But since I have a lift, it makes it easier for me just to check, make sure nothing leaks, and then go ahead and put it on. So let's go ahead and fill it with oil now. Again, I use the mobile one. It's the turbo diesel. It's the 5W40. and I buy them in the 4-quart jugs. These come in 4-quart. The other mobile ones actually come in 5-quart, so you actually need to pay attention to that. So let's go ahead and fill it. I have 2 of these. Most Audis are the B5 S4s. If you don't have an aftermarket oil cooler, take about 6.5 quarts. Mine will take about 7, maybe just over 7 quarts. I usually put about 7 though to start with. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, that is 4 quarts. Now they have lines here that make it really nice and easy so you can figure out what you need. Now I need 7 quarts on mine, so I will have to go and I'll end up being about right there. Actually, it's this one right here. Out of the 8 quarts of the mobile that I got, I will have 1 quart left, which would be to this line. Again, if it's an S4 without an aftermarket oil cooler, it'll be 6.5 quarts. So you actually have 1.5 quarts left in the bottle. So that's about 1.5 quarts right there. So that's where you would stop. I'm going to go ahead and put another half quart in for this car. That looks good. Looks good. So now let's lift this back up. You guys probably you could start your car right now if you want to and check it and make sure nothing leaks, but I'm going to go ahead and do the transmission fluid and the diff fluid, and then I'll go through and make sure everything's okay. We're going to start and we're going to drain the transmission fluid. Now, a word of advice, even for the rear diff and the transmission, always undo the fill bolt first, because if you can't fill the transmission, if you can't get that bolt off and you drain the fluid, you screw yourself. So make sure you always start with the fill plug, and I'll show you where everything's located. Okay, so you can see right there, that's the fill plug. There's the front transmission drain plug. There's the center diff drain plug. And these bolts, it takes an M10 or a 10 millimeter hex bolt or hex socket. So there you go. There's the fill, there's a drain, and there's a drain. Okay, so I'm ready to start, and we'll get this going. Let's see if we get this off. Man, that was on there really tight, but it's off. Or it's loose. Since that's loose, we could go ahead and drain the fluid out of the transmission now. So let's go ahead and loosen the drain. Oh man. Requires a breaker bar on this one. One's off. These have been draining for a while. They're still dripping. So, but I'm going to go ahead and put the bolts back in, the drain bolts. They go in pretty heavy. They go in with 40 Newton meters of torque. So just remember that that's what they need. Let's go ahead and do the rear one. Drain plugs are in. They're in with 40 Newton meters of torque. What I'll do now is we'll go ahead and fill the fluid, or we'll put everything in the transmission, the fluid in the transmission. It's about 2.9 liters, so when you order, Make sure you order enough bottles, usually about 3 bottles, maybe 4. It just depends on what pump you have as well. The pump I use, there's always some left over in the bottom, so I have to order an extra bottle just to make sure I have enough to pump through. Usually I just pump it until fluid starts coming out the fill hole, and that's how I know it's full. Okay, so this is the pump I use. You could buy it at AutoZone or any, Napa or something like that. They're relatively cheap, and some people have pneumatic ones, some people don't, but this is what I use. Again, I use it's the Fuchs. It's the Titan Cinto Fluid 7580. This is highly regarded stuff. I would highly suggest that this is what you put in your transmission and rear diff fluid. So as I'm getting towards the end here, or filled, you can see that I got a steady stream of gear oil coming down, and I'll just go really slow with pushing the fluid in. And that's about all I'm going to be able to fit in there. It's a good steady stream coming in now. So now I'll go ahead and I'll put the fill plug back in. And again, 40 newton meters of torque. And the transmission fluid is done. Now we're going to move on to the rear diff. Okay, on the rear diff, here's the diff drain bolt. And then here's the fill bolt right here. Just remember that you always want to loosen the fill bolt first. So let's go ahead and get started. It took a little bit, but I did get it loose with some finagling. All right, so let's go ahead and take the drain bolt off and let's drain it. I let it drain for a little bit, and now I'm going to put the plug back in. Again, it goes on with 40 newton meters of torque. And now let's go ahead and fill it. Again, we will want to fill this until fluid starts coming out of the fill hole. So now, as you can see, the fluid's coming out pretty heavily, so it's full. Now I'll go ahead and put the drain plug or the fill plug back on, and we're good to go. This one also needs to go in with 40 newton meters of torque. All we need to do now is just clean up the mess. I'll go run the car, get it nice and warm, put it back up on the lift, and then put the belly pan back on. Other than that, that's how you change the oil and the transmission and diff fluid. Everything ran, everything looks good, everything's tight, there's enough oil in the car. Trans and rear diff feel good, so I'm going to go ahead and put the belly pan back on, and we'll call this done. belly pan's on. So let's go ahead and lower the car and we're done. Looks good.